Finally, see 1200 words to start. Mr. Deputy Chairman, while moving this resolution, I would like to request the House and the government and the Prime Minister in particular not to take this resolution as one moved by this or that party, but as reflecting the feelings of our countrymen, at least of a very considerable section of our countrymen. Those feelings are reflected, if I may mention, in the resolution that was moved by the All India Congress Committee itself. And to cite another example in the statements of an eminent statesman like Rajaji. In fact, he has launched a campaign for our withdrawal from the Commonwealth. Now, sir, the Prime Minister himself had said in the Lok Sabha that because of the Anglo-French attack on Egypt, this question had to be considered afresh. It is today not only a question of sentiment or moral attitude or of our past attitude towards any association with the Britishers, but it is something more than that. Sir, if I borrow the phrase of the Prime Minister himself, we have to look at this question in a larger perspective, the perspective of war and peace, though these factors also count as very important in the consideration of this matter. In the past, the whole stand of our national movement was for complete dissolution from the British Commonwealth. When that stand was reversed in 1949, this country was not given an adequate explanation as to why that stand was reversed. The Prime Minister certainly gave some explanations in the Constituent Assembly and in his public speeches, but the main point which he made was that many things had changed in the world and Britain had also changed. But there was nothing wrong if we associate with Britain as a sovereign country in the Commonwealth for purposes which may be to our common good. Now, sir, recent events and particularly the Anglo-French aggression on Egypt have clearly demonstrated that the British imprisonment has not changed. I do not mean the British people, but I mean the British imperialism, which has not changed at all. Events in Malaysia, events in Kenya, and events in South Africa were all clear pointers to the fact that the characteristic of the British imperialism had not changed, and it has not changed even now. We were told that we had been associating as equal partners in the British Commonwealth. While launching this adventure of aggression, the British government did not think it necessary to consult the government of India, or at least to consider the feelings of the government of India, which represented the feelings of the people of India. They did not have even that much courtesy. So, where is the question of equality of status? Then the bill, sir, which I have moved for the consideration of the House, mainly falls into four parts, as I have more than once pointed out in my speeches in connection with the First Amendment Act that was passed in 1952. The list that was prepared and appended to the original bill was done in a very haphazard way. In the First Amendment Act, an effort was made to correct some of the mistakes and to add a few more archaeological sites and monuments. In connection with that bill, sir, I had pointed out even then that there were quite a few monuments which were not included in that, even though they should have been immediately included therein. Hence, in this bill that I have put forth here, I have tried to include some additional monuments which should have been included therein even last time. The second thing that I have tried to do in this bill is this: in the original act as well as even after the First Amendment Act, there remained quite a few mistakes, very patent mistakes, which need to be corrected. For instance, the district of Rajasthan were never correctly named, and all the districts were not even included in that act. Thirdly, I have held the view that all the important monuments which have been protected under the Incident Monuments Preservation Act 2004 and which are in the states should be declared to be of national importance. I urge this for two reasons. Firstly, I have always been of the view that there is no reason why, just because certain actions can be taken and certain moves can be made in the states under the Act of 2004, those monuments should not be declared to be of national importance. Sir, I am really amazed to see that while some petty monuments have been declared to be of national importance, the great stupa of Sachi, which is revered not only in India but also in lands like China, Japan, and the Far East. Mr. Deputy Chairman, this is only an amending bill and the time is also very short. So I cannot take up all the industries separately, but I shall confine myself to a few observations. Last year, also in this house, by about this time, we discussed another tariff amendment bill. In connection with that, I made certain observations as well as suggestions for the government, but I do not find that any attention has been paid to these suggestions. My suggestions were to this effect that when any bill for granting protection or discounting protection to an industry was brought, we should be supplied with certain information under three categories. The first information was whether the protection granted to an industry had been used only by the indigenous industry or advantage of the protection had been taken by foreign capital entrenched in that industry, because, sir, I submit that the main purpose of granting protection to certain industries is to develop our national industries, but if it is found that taking advantage of the protection, foreign capital goes into those fields where the industry is not highly developed or it does not involve a huge outlay of capital or huge outlay of machinery, the protection becomes a farce. My second category of suggestions was that when protection was granted to an industry, it should be seen how far that industry was progressing properly and also how far it was taking steps to lighten the burden on the consumers. Thirdly, when we are granting protection to certain industries, we have the right to demand of that industry that it should give a fair deal to its own labor. I suggest that when notes are circulated to us in connection with a tariff amending bill, we should be supplied that information on these various counts, particularly these three. Lastly, I would like to make another point in connection with the soda ash industry. The question of this industry was discussed thoroughly on the floor of the House last year. The fact is that I gave certain suggestions and also drew the attention of the House to certain peculiar features connected with this industry. The domestic production is still far less than the actual domestic demand. That is why import of soda ash is being allowed, but it was complained that license for importing soda ash were given to the Imperial Chemical Industries stuck